So let's go ahead and take a look at lesson 1. So installing motherboards and connectors. We're going to explain cable types and connectors, install and configure motherboards, and explain legacy type cables. Here we're talking about personal computers. Hopefully you can see here it has a system case, the tower design versus the all-in-one, a side panel, access system components for upgrades and maintenance, front panel ports and features, and in their picture they have down here at the bottom, my eyes are going, fan vents for airflow, temperature display and case, power button, front panel audio and USB, unused optical data drive, and a optical disk drive. And then we have the back of the computer, rear panel ports and features, power supply and fan, motherboard input output ports, expansion card ports and blanking plates. So you have the power supply and you have the chassis fan for airflow. Then you have your power supply up at the top, where you can see that the AC adapter goes in here. You see the spot with the fan. You have your expansion card slot here. You have your expansion card slot not in use with the shield over it. And then you see the motherboard panel right here. Kind of small on here. I don't know if I can make it a little bit bigger. I could, but I hopefully it's big on this screen for you. There we go. That's a little bit better. So this is the back of the computer. And you're probably all maybe familiar with the back of the computer a little bit, but you can see the power supply, the chassis fan and airflow, the motherboard, expansion slot, expansion card. And then we're going to talk a little bit about peripheral output ports and peripheral devices. Looks like a picture is missing. Input output types in peripheral cables, interfaces, ports and connectors, binary data storage and transfer. And then here are universal serial bus cables, USB 2.0 and USB 3.0. So there are different USB cables. There's the type A, B, B mini, and type B micro. I'm pretty sure you're all probably familiar if you have any amount of electronics in your house over the last 5 or 6 years. The micro, how popular that is. The type B mini, which is kind of like an odder, thicker micro. And the type B, which was essentially you'll see that on printers, and type a much larger one that you still see out there. And then now we have USB 3.0 and 3.1, which has additional power for USB charging. You have the type B micro and type C. Let me make sure. I was just seeing if anyone has any. If you have questions, throw them in the chat. I keep an eye on that as well. So multi-purpose eternal bus, USB 2x versus USB 3.x, data rates. You're going to have an overview of data rates in the reading around these types of connectors. There is going to get some more complicated information related to data rates as you get deeper into the reading. But you need to know the different types to start with from a broad view. HDMI and DisplayPort video cables. So you have mini HDMI, and then you see the DisplayPort here, and video requirements, bandwidth, resolution, refresh rate, HDMI, versions and cable consideration, DisplayPort, daisy chaining. So what you're going to learn about in the reading is that DisplayPort is a separate technology that was created to challenge HDMI a little bit when they had the sole ability to be putting out HDMI cables. That's why they were so expensive initially when they came out on the market. And then since then, of course, their prices dramatically dropped. But for a while, the only other option was DisplayPort. So just that'll be in the reading. Thunderbolt and Lightning cables, Thunderbolt versions and connectors, active versus passive cabling, USB compatibility, because what you're going to find is that some of the Thunderbolt and Lightning cables have limited ability to work with other USB type ports, not just because of the ends, but also because of the power differences and types of different devices. Lightning connector, iOS device connector, and adapter cables. So we'll get into that. There's not one thing I will say about these presentations is they're good for an overview, but there are a lot of details within the reading that you'll see additional facts in the reading that they're not including within these presentations. SATA hard drive cable. It's a data connector, SATA power connector, Molex power connectors, external SATA eSATA. So these are different SATA hard drive cable. As you can see, the data cable and the power cable. And then you can see the ones that have the prongs here before the Molex. So here's a little review discussing personal computers. This is not an in-depth review, so just keep that in mind. You'll notice that with the reading, but I did want you to have a beginning introduction to the lessons without having the access. So this is a good place to start. USB universal serial bus, HDMI and DisplayPort video cables, Thunderbolt and Lightning cables, SATA hard drive cables, cable types and connectors. So they have a lab activity for this, virtual workbench, upgrading, installing a GPU and daisy chain monitors. So it's going to be basically installing a graphical processing unit and also daisy chaining monitors to have connectivity. Then we move into 1B, installing configuring motherboards. So PC system architecture utilizes binary data and instructions, includes a central processing unit in the cache, system memory, mass storage, and removable storage. So you're going to learn, if you don't already know, about the differences between mass storage, removable storage, and RAM and how they all work together. The CPU is essentially the brains of the computer. RAM is the operating, not volatile memory. And then there's non-volatile storage memory for storing files, and also removable storage like disk drives or even adding an external drive. Clock speed and frequency multipliers are another kind of feature that you're going to also get into with the PC architecture. Electrical safety and ESD. Electrical safety, disconnect power, electrostatic discharge, use anti-static tools to prevent damage to chips. So this is a question in the lesson. So just make sure you keep that in mind, that this is a question within, as you go along, they ask you about electrostatic discharge. So there's going to be questions that are more than just maybe what you might think is a typical computer question. You might have a question about that, for example. The motherboard, CPU, and system memory connectors, the CPU sockets and their form factors, their shapes, and the chipset, and also system memory slots. So those slots for RAM and the DIMM slots for system memory. So here you can see the in-out ports for USB, video, audio, etc. And then you have the CPU socket. And then here you see your memory slots for the RAM. Here your disk drive connectors. And then you see your adapter card slots. So these are different types of system memory connectors. I'm just going to put my heat on real quick. I'm freezing. Different types of system memory. All right, motherboard storage connectors. Oh, I just saw that. I just get the notifications for the previous room when people pop into the call. Motherboard storage connectors, SATA M2 eSATA. Motherboard adapter connectors, PCI Express, PCIe, lanes and link bandwidth, PCIe versions and compatibility, how they're powered. And then there's a PCI peripheral component interconnect, legacy interface. So here's the X16 PCIe slot, and then times 8 PCIe slot. And then, so you have different PCI. Now, it's going to be more important to understand why these are relative as you move forward based on the questions. So I know it's a lot of information, maybe at first, if you've never learned about these parts of the computer, but I would recommend that you start to learn why you're learning it, which will come in the reading. Motherboard form factors. There's the physical dimensions of the motherboard, the case and power that is provided the motherboard by what it's inside of, the number of adapter cards that are supported, advanced technology extended, ATX, full size and micro ATX. Then there's the information technology extended, mini ITX, motherboard installation standoff. And then CompTIA is pretty good about providing a picture for a lot of the stuff that they're giving you. Motherboard headers and power connectors. So we have the front panel headers, and then we have 9-pin USB headers, and we also have audio headers. And connections headers are connections for the monitor, also graphics processing unit, frame rate and 3D effects and textures, graphics memory, video ports, type and number, capture cards, video input, recording, reading. Some of you may have a digital SLR and you want to run it and use it as a webcam. That's done through a capture card. You take a mini USB and you make it go to a full USB, and you input it through a capture card, and it runs and captures the image to a computer. That's how that type of work. Basically, it transmits that signal from a larger symbol to a smaller one. How you doing? Yeah, you can grab it. It's all right. Thank you. So it basically transfers images. That's what a capture card will do. And then there's video port, graphics memory. So that's the power of video capture cards and graphics processing units. The card, the ports, the HDMI port, and then DVI port. Sound cards, onboard internet networking, network interface card, and Wi-Fi adapter. All right, so those are some cards. Review activity goes over the motherboard functions, electrical safety, video cards, and then a workbench installing a motherboard. So what they have you do in the workbench, once you guys get connected to it, is you'll be actually putting and installing a motherboard into a computer with the right protocols. You're going to learn about installing, configuring power, wattage ratings, power supply connectors, fan cooling systems, liquid cooling systems. And so this is a little shorter. Topic 2B gets us into mass storage and solid state drives, hard disk drives, redundant array of disks, RAID 0 and RAID 1, RAID 5 and RAID 10. These are important slides actually for a PBQ that require you understanding the difference between the RAID 0, RAID 1, and the RAID 5 and RAID 10. Removable storage, optical drives, and then a review of the storage devices and the differences. All right, awesome. So what we're going to do is I'm going to click into practice, into installing motherboards and connectors, and we're going to go through the questions. And what I want you to do is, as we go through the question, I want to see if we can get a consensus on an answer and see how we do. What I'm going to do, and I recommend this too, this is a study thing that I think will help. As we go through the questions, I'm going to take some notes just for myself. I'm going to write down what we put for answers. And I recommend the same thing to you when you're studying. So when you study and you take a practice, write down your answers as you take it so that how to correct and what you may have gotten wrong. They're going to give you the answers. You're going to figure out what you got wrong, but you want to correct yourself. You know what I mean? You want to correct yourself as you go along. Always note the correct answer, and we're going to see how we do. All right, so just remember where I'm at. I'm in practice. I've chosen lesson 1. I'm going to go to practice connect. So I don't expect you to really know all of these, but it'd be great to see you read along with me and then also throw a guess into the chat and get you engaged with the content a little bit. A support technician is installing a new SATA hard drive on a new computer. What is the best type of cable connector the technician will plug in to supply power to the drive? So I believe Y said 15 pin. Anyone else want to throw a guess in there? 15 pin, 4 pin, A, Eileen, C, 4 pin. So we have 2. So we've got a couple people for A. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and click A. Now, the thing I want people to start recognizing is always when you read a question, always just make sure it's confirming one answer. This question is definitely only asking for one answer, but you're going to see questions kind of change. So just make sure. I'm going to pick A, 15 pin. Seems like most people are feeling that. Now, also notice the difficulty level. All right. That is also an important thing to notice. The difficulty level of a question and also what number of answers, because you're probably going to get caught up at some point by not paying attention to the number of answers. I'm pretty sure it happens to everybody. So I'm going to hit. So that was correct. 15 pin was the correct answer. So here's where you want to, if you're doing this on your own, you definitely want to take a note to yourself. A support technician's installing a new SATA hard drive on a computer, 15 pin connector. And what they'll do is they'll always add a little bit of additional information. All right. And they'll also give the domain and the exam objective. Let me see. So I can save that as a PDF. Let's do that. All right. So next, all right, we're going to hit continue. So this talks about the serially advanced technology. And standard means internal storage drive within the desktop. The 7-pin connector is for data and does not have the power supply to power the drive. So when you see the green, what you'll see them give you is the technician will plug in a 15-pin SATA connector to connect. So they're giving you the directive, what is happening. And then in the next part of the response, they're telling you why it's not 7. And there's reason why it's not 7 is because it does not have power. All right. And it gives you legacy storage devices, it gives you additional information. So always try to pay attention to the reason why, especially if you get it wrong or if you get it right and you weren't sure why you got it right. You definitely want to make note. All right. A support technician needs to install a legacy peripheral component, interconnect PCI sound card. Which of the following statements about PCI is not true? So a support technician needs to install a legacy, so an older peripheral component, interconnect, PCI slot, a PCI sound card. What of the following statements about PCI is not true? PCI Express supersedes PCI. PCI uses parallel communications. The PCI card can fit into the PCIe slot. PCI is software compatible with PCIe. So which of those is not true? We have some people want to chime in. So we're feeling C and D. Are those the guesses so far? C and D. PCI is software compatible. All right. Now, which of the following statement about PCI is not true? I'm wondering if there could be more than one. So I'm going to click C. And can we click D? No, only one is right. So which one do we? I see a lot. I got 2 Ds, 3 Cs. All right, we'll go with C and we'll see what happens. But I also know there's a strong D contingency here. So it was C. So the support technician needs to install a legacy peripheral component interconnect. The PCIe Express motherboards can include PCI ports to support legacy adapter cards, but PCI cards cannot fit into PCIe slots. PCI Express supersedes peripheral component interconnect, which is a legacy bus type, but computers can support more than one expansion bus. So they basically break it down that basically they can't fit into the same slot. PCI Express supersedes peripheral component interconnect, which is the older legacy bus, but computers can support more than one. It just came ahead of it. PCI uses parallel communications to increase bandwidth and a transfer rate up to 133 megabytes per second. Their software is compatible and it can include PCI ports to support legacy adapter cards. And that is PCI. So you guys are close, though. You guys are definitely in the ballpark here, right? We had some good guesses for C. All right, let's go to the next one. A support technician opened a PC case and observed a small computer system interface, SCSI, connector plugged into the motherboard. What can the technician know to be true about the connector? So a support technician opened a PC case and observed a small computer connector plugged into the motherboard. What can the technician know to be true about the connector? It is likely connected to the hard disk. Each device on a wide SCSI bus must be configured with a unique ID from 0 to 68. It transfers data 1 bit at a time. It only supports one device at a time. So we're getting some guesses. D. So open a PC case, a small computer interface connector. Small computer interface. So we have someone who thinks A, likely connected to the hard disk. D, it only supports one device at a time. Oh, choosing the waiting room. Let me help her in. Let me see. Let me see the waiting room. Because the meeting's open. If you do have the log information, you don't need to wait in the waiting room, I don't believe. Give me 1 second. She was just in. I saw her in. Have her try to enter again because I'm not seeing my waiting room. And I know she was able to get in before I saw her in. So I know she did make it in originally. I'm just not seeing anyone waiting, just checking the list. Just let her in if you can. She should be able to access with the information from the email. So let's take a look at the chat. So we have a couple guesses for Hector and Jolene. So A and D are the dominant. A, another. I'm going to go with A because we just got one more vote for A, and let's see how we do. A is correct. I lucked out. And so we had a mix of A and D. The correct answer was A. Now, keep in mind, some of these will have two answers. So just keep that in mind. Some will have two answers. These only have one. So a support technician opened a case. It is likely connected to the hard disk is the correct answer. SCSI connectors are commonly used to connect hard disks as well as other storage devices like tape drives, CD, DVD drives, and external storage devices. Each device on a wide SCSI bus must be configured with unique ID from 0 to 15. Notice in the question they said 0 to 68. While a serial interface essentially transfers one bit at a time, a parallel interface such as SCSI transfers 8 bits, 1 byte or more, and requires more wires in the cable and more pins in the connectors. One SCSI host bus adapter can control multiple devices attached by internal ribbons, cables, or external SCI cables. So what we'll be doing is hopefully maybe next week, well, hopefully Wednesday maybe, I'll have you work in pairs going through these questions and practicing and reviewing as we move through. All right. And that's a really good practice. All right. Because if you notice, I wanted to let you all know in the beginning, often there's multiple levels to the questions, and you're going to start to see that more and more as you get deeper into the questions. So I'm going to keep, I'm saving a folder of questions. All right. So let's try to do at least one or two more. All right. A support technician is installing a PCIe card that will use a combination of system memory and dedicated memory. What type of card is the tech installing? It has system memory and dedicated memory. Anyone want to throw in an idea? People got A, well, C, D, got a lot of D, C or D. I think there's mostly people are feeling D. We got one for A, graphics card. Is installing a PCIe card. Use common system. Anyone else want to chime in? We got D. People are really feeling the D or the C. I'm going to do the C for you folks because you guys were in the CD area. Let's see how we do. Oh, I was thinking A too. Why do we think maybe A? The support technician is installing a graphics adapter, also called a video card. So what made me feel like was it's a combination of system memory and dedicated memory, because a graphics card needs lots of memory and power in itself to make graphics show up, but it also needs to be integrated with the CPU in a lot of ways because it's really helping it run graphics. A support technician is installing a graphics adapter, also called a video card. Graphics adapters can have up to 12 gigs of dedicated memory and may use a mix of dedicated and shared or system memory. Sound cards can provide playback through speakers or headphones, which plug into the video card via an audio jack, and sound cards also record input from a microphone. So dedicated memory and a mix of dedicated or shared system memory for a graphics card. Sound cards. So the important thing to notice when you get a question wrong is also notice what type of information they give you. So they gave me now more information about sound cards and how playback through speakers or headphones. And then network interface cards already come installed as part of the motherboard chipset, but a technician may need to upgrade it to use a different type of network or cabling or connector. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And then technicians can add a Wi-Fi adapter to connect to a wireless network. So this question, getting the right answer, is a lot about understanding what type of information they're giving you. And here they're giving us that information around it being connected to the system memory and dedicated memory. Let's try to do one more quickly. All right. A computer is processing software instructions on the central processing unit. How is all computer software broken down to be processed? So a computer, always read the questions twice too, just to make sure you have a feel for them, and look for different things when you are reading the question. So a computer is processing software instructions on the central CPU. How is the computer software broken down to be processed? A bus, binary, RAM, system clock. We have a lot of people feeling binary. All right, I think we're feeling good about binary. Yay! All right, so binary, the computer is processing software instructions on the central processing unit. How is all computer software broken down to be processed? So since we know the answer is binary, all computer software works by running instructions in the CPU. And computers process all the software and data as the ones and zeros of binary code. So many of you have probably taken maybe a computer class before or heard that before, but it's basically binary is a system of zeros and ones that basically is programming, right? System software, and it runs instructions. But the hard part of these questions is, even if you get one right, is reading the additional information. Bus interfaces on the motherboard transmit instructions and data between computer components using electrical signals, but many types of bus interfaces can supply power to the connected interfaces. So that they do provide power. Random access RAM storage technology is non-persistent, which means that the RAM device can only hold data when the user powers on the PC. So that's only when it has power. It's not like an external drive or an SSD drive, which will hold memory without power, like a flash drive. It needs to have the power running in the central processing unit. The motherboard system clock synchronizes the operation of all parts of the PC and provides the basic timing signal for the CPU. PCs measure clock speeds in megahertz or gigahertz. The motherboard system clock synchronizes the operation of all parts of the PC and provides the basic timing signal for the CPU. PCs measure clock speeds in megahertz or gigahertz. So that's the system clock for the motherboard. All right. So that's a good idea of what we're going to be doing a lot of our time in class. That's what I like to do a lot, is even have us where we're not just using the chat. How do people feel about things? Give me an okay in the chat if you're feeling okay so far. I know you don't have your access tonight, but we're working hard to get this to you as soon as possible. I hope you guys at least have a pretty good understanding of the types of things we'll be going over. You get to see some of the questions. We actually got about 26% through that lesson. And I'm thinking I might be assigning the reading to be done outside of class, and what we can focus on is actually practicing questions all the time, which might be better than actually doing longer reviews of the content. So definitely take, between now and Wednesday, definitely do a couple things. So what I want you to do is, on my CompTIA A, I'm back to presenting. Good to hear people are feeling pretty good. On here at the very bottom, I put